All right. Recording has begun. So Tim, I will hand it off to you first to introduce yourself.
All right, great. Thank you. So, hi everyone. My name is Tim Lansing. I went to undergrad at SUNY Plattsburgh and I studied history. After that, I went to graduate school at UAlbany where I earned my MPA. I graduated last year in May of 2024. Right now, I am working at Albany County as a personnel technician in their Department of Civil Service. And a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis is dealing with personnel matters. Michael, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tim.
Tim. So I'm Michael Lally. I am the Director of Operations for Albany County in the County Executive's Office. I went to undergrad at Salve Regina. It's a small school in Newport, Rhode Island. Then I went into the Marine Corps, spent 4 years there, got out, started working with Albany County. Around that same time, I started pursuing my MPA at Rockefeller, graduated there in 2020, and kind of moved up in the county throughout that process.
Thanks, Michael. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll kind of just get started with questions that you guys have for the panelists, and just seeing if there's anything else I missed here. But I can ask one question to get it started, but would anybody else like to ask before I do so? And on Zoom too. I know we have a lot of students in our class, but then I see James is on here. He's not in our class, but I know him. We've got Emily, Ryan. So yeah, if anybody wants to start, feel free. But yeah, just asking any questions you have for Michael and Tim who are working in local government. No questions. Okay, well, hopefully you guys have some questions as we keep going. So my first question for you both is, what experiences, like whether it's been an internship, whether it's been prior jobs, have led you to your current positions?
That's a great question. I'll start it off. I think the key thing that really led me to seeking local government as a career path was my actual undergraduate degree in history. In my studies in history, I became really passionate about the effect that local government can have on the people that reside under that local government, and I wanted to be a part of the process of governing the public. So I came to Rockefeller College with the intent of getting into local government after my MPA program. And the key thing that enabled me to enter into local government from there is actually a fellowship with Albany County, where I currently work. I transitioned from that fellowship into full-time employment after I graduated with my MPA. And I don't know if I would be where I am today without that fellowship. That is 100% for sure. The experience of College, of course, also played a huge part in me gaining the knowledge and the soft skills I needed to perform in local government. And one thing that I would really encourage you all, I'm not sure if you're all undergraduate students or graduate students, but if you are interested in government at any level, I would highly consider going after your MPA at Rockefeller College because I really can't say enough great things about that degree. It's really sets you up for a great future with great skills, and you can come out of that program with a great network as well.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into government work. I did not have any plan of going to work for the government. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was aggressively looking for work. I was the kind of guy that, bought my first suit and walked up and down State Street handing out resumes. I eventually was volunteering at this not-for-profit for mothers and early children. And it just kind of worked out where I met someone. They offered me to come and work for the county. I started out driving. And then I just realized how much of an impact you can make at the county. It's great because it's one of the few places where you can actually make a change to policy and then see a direct impact on what that change is. And I've stood up dozens of programs and policies that have had an impact, whether it's drug related for opioids and proper disposal of those drugs to law enforcement assisted diversion. And it's a really fantastic feeling, which is why I kind of stay here, just so I can keep doing work that's going to positively impact people's lives.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael. No, thank you guys for sharing that. Questions? Dennis, do you have a question? Yeah, so we've got one question in the class. Ryan, I'll have you go next. Sorry, you guys just did that at the exact same time. So Vince in our class right here, I know you can't see him. I'll try to hang on. Let me try to unblur this. All right, let's see. Clearly, you guys can see my technology expertise here. So, okay, so Vince has a question here.
Could any of you speak to a time, like a specific instance where you felt you were able to produce tangible change or progress for someone through the use of like local government?
Yeah, definitely. So it's happened a lot throughout my career. And that can be just bumping into someone and, hearing that they're looking for a job and finding them employment. That's one of the easiest and quickest ways, which is a fantastic feeling. Tim has had plenty of those instances, whether it's a career fair or just having someone come into our office and find them work. Another one, like I mentioned before, is the law enforcement assisted diversion. So that was where Albany County, in partnership with the city, the public defender's office, district attorney's office, and Albany Police Department, stood up this program where we gave law enforcement officers the ability to divert people convicted of certain low-level crimes. And I was able to secure funding, about $900,000 for that, which would go to the police officers' overtime, as well as the caseworkers that were assigned to these individuals. And rather than going to jail, they were going into, human service programs, whether that was mental health or whether that was getting connected to social services like SNAP or HEAP. And it's pretty good because you see people that go through this program, and granted, not a lot have actually been successful, but a handful have been successful. And these are people that are no longer in the criminal justice system. They have gainful employment, they have housing. They kind of broke that cycle. So that's probably the one that I'm most proud of, that I think actually made a genuine impact on people's lives.
And to speak to that on my end, Michael alluded to it a little bit. The thing that really I have made the most impact on is I think finding people employment and fleshing out the recruitment system at Albany County. That's been a main thing that I have done over my tenure at the county, both as a full-time employee and as a fellow when I was working part-time as well. I worked on building out a recruitment plan for the county, um, making recruitment materials, starting to attend job fairs for the county, developing messaging to get people interested in local government. And as a result of my work doing that, I have personally seen at least 5 or 6 employees walk through the door at Albany County that I have met firsthand at a job fair. And from there, I walked them through the employment line.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And thanks, Vince. That's a great question. So we've got a couple in the chat. So sorry, I'm moving my screen, guys, but I'm just gonna see what we've got in here. So the question from Ryan in the chat is, what have been some highlights of your experience in local government thus far?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the current highlight I'm going through is right now, Albany County, as you might have heard, created the Pine Hills Land Authority for the purpose of purchasing the former St. Rose campus. That is currently my entire life right now, is finding a purpose for each building on campus. And it's pretty difficult because you think about some of them, like libraries, study halls, classrooms, and they're built specifically for universities. Now finding a way to redevelop those is challenging, but it's really interesting stuff because this hasn't really been done before. So I'm getting a crash course in everything from creating a public authority to zoning laws to standing up a homeowners association in order to share HVAC between all these different buildings when we sell them off. That's the current highlight I'm going through, but it kind of speaks to the general idea of local government. When you get to a certain level, you're just doing a ton of random things you never expected to do, and it keeps you very interested in the work that you're doing.
And my current highlight is probably planning the Albany County Career Expo, which just happened about 2 weeks ago. It was our first county-wide job fair. We held it at MVP Arena, and It was a very challenging event to plan, with a small team of people involved. It was myself and my two supervisors in the Department of Civil Service doing the bulk of the work, doing the planning for this event, and we were able to get about 30 of our county departments to come table at this event at MVP Arena, and then we had over 400 attendees throughout the 4-hour event expressing their interest in local government employment at the Albany County. So that was really great to see. It was a really great moment for me personally, putting on an event like that. And I think it was also great for the county because it showed that there is a wide interest in local government employment beyond what you might think when you just search Albany County on the internet.
Great. Thank you both for that. No, that's a great question. And it's great to hear as, you know, as you guys who are interested in going into local government, like what there is to look forward to. So thank you. So the next question I'll ask from the chat from Favorite Joy is, does one need to take the civil service exam to work at the county level?
So I think I can speak on this pretty well because I am in civil service. Right now, it is the best time to get into local government or any government in New York State because of the New York Helps program. If none of you have heard of the New York Helps program, what it actually does is waive civil service exam requirements for many, many, many titles at all level of government in New York State. So right now at Albany County, we have I think about 300 positions that are approved for the New York Helps program, meaning you don't need a civil service exam to get that position. So most of the jobs that we have right now, you actually don't need to take a civil service exam to get into your foot in the door. So it's a great time to try to get into local government, and that program will be going until June of 2026. That is the date it'll be going to. So you'll have a little bit over a year to try to get your foot in the door with government, but because of that, you do not need to take a civil service exam to get into government right now.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question here from Caitlin is, what's the best part of your job and what's the most difficult part of your job?
I would say they're the same thing. It's coming into situations without knowing anything about it. Um, I mentioned St. Rose, but there's a whole bunch of other instances. Right now, the county's trying to acquire land to build a fire training facility. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm the one that's tasked with doing it. So you can lean on experts that you have. The larger your municipality, the more experts you have, like your Department of Law or Department of Planning. Smaller municipalities, you kind of have to get by or contract out for a lot of that work. It can be very difficult because you're trying to learn something new, but at the same time, it's exciting because it's all brand new stuff that's a challenge for you if you like that kind of thing. One of the other difficult things I would say to be very aware of is that when you're at a higher level working in government, you find yourself at the nexus of politics and public administration. And what that means is that you need to follow the will of your chief elected official, which you may not always necessarily agree with. But as part of that individual's administration, whether it's a mayor or a county executive or a senator, you need to make sure that you are completing what their goal is, what their agenda is that they're trying to push forward. And if you don't necessarily agree with that, it can be a little bit challenging.
One thing that I will say on my end that I sometimes find difficult in my position in civil service is gaining buy-in from other departments to work within the civil service system. But that's something a little bit more unique to my position. It really takes a lot of communication skills, leadership skills, and problem-solving skills to work through some of these problems sometimes, these personnel problems that I come across in my position. So that's something that I find challenging in my position, but it's also really rewarding to solve those problems that are, tangled and difficult to solve. That's something that I really find difficult, but also rewarding about working in local government.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim. So I have Jamie here. So Albany is a very difficult confusing this, and I've gotten lost so many times, so I'm not gonna, don't worry about that. So, and I explained our issue here. I'm just gonna blur the background. I'll have Jamie introduce himself, and then we can keep going with our questions. So, sorry, let me just adjust this real quick. None. All right.
And don't feel bad, Jamie. I'm at the downtown campus right now because I didn't read the instructions that well.
I should have known where I was going, but the building was named something different when I went to school here. So I was walking around the humanities building looking for this, and anyway, did not realize that this education changed names.
I wish I could say I knew that. This is my first year here, so I wish I could say I knew the difference
I don't remember when that
between
happened.
the cats, but no worries at all. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jamie Zeno. I went to UAlbany in undergrad and grad. Was in Rockefeller College for my undergraduate in political science. That was graduated 2015. And 2018, I got an MA from another part of UAlbany. Not as great as Rockefeller College, but I got an MA in communications from the communications school. That was 2018, and I a little bit different from the Albany County folks. I work for the New York State Senate. I work for Senator Pat Fahey, who represents UAlbany in all parts campus, both the city of Albany part and the town of Guilderland, downtown, uptown, all this area. I'm the senator's chief of staff. I've worked in a number of different parts of government over the decade or so since I graduated. I did the graduate school part-time, mostly at night. So, in campaigns and whatnot right after that, and then worked with local governments through the state controller's office, and then the state senate the last couple of years.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. We appreciate it. So I'm just going to move into our next question here. And okay. So I'm going to go to Favorite Joy's question, which is, in the ties you have walked into, offices, resume in hand. How successful was that? And would you consider someone who does a walk-in looking for an opportunity successful, I'm assuming? Oh, sorry, it says in the times. It spell checked. Okay. In the times you have walked into offices, resume in hand, how successful was that? And would you consider someone who does a walk-in looking for an opportunity? So I guess does that question make sense to you guys?
Yeah, so it depends on what office you're walking into. Being the one who receives people, like if you walked into our office, we would take care of you. We would find you a job that day and encourage you to apply for it on the spot. Having been the individual with the resume in hand, it didn't go so well. I was unaware when I came up to New York about how everything was civil service. And I remember walking into countless offices and just being told, oh, I'm sorry, you have to apply and take an exam first. And it was kind of hard to navigate that system coming from the outside. But like Tim said, we're in a very good place now with the HELPS program where you can kind of get around that arduous testing process.
Great.
I will back up what Michael says as well. It really matters about the office that you do go into. So, for example, the Department of Civil Service at Albany County or the county executive's office, those are ideal offices to walk into with a resume in your hand to see if they have an open position for you. Now, on the other hand, if you were to walk into some of our other departments that aren't so employment focused or personnel focused, you might not get the same reception from a hiring manager in that department, but depending on what their day is looking like that specific day. So what I would generally recommend is reaching out over email to government employees because that's what I find is the best way to get in touch with them. It can take a long time to get responses sometimes, but depending on who you're reaching out to, that is. But it really does depend on the bandwidth of the person that you're trying to get in touch with. So if you were to, for example, try to come to Albany County with your resume, I would help you try to apply for a position that very day. But for our other departments, it might be different.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to move to our next question here. So from Mia, so this question is for you, Michael. Let's see. How was your experience going? This is a great question. How was your experience going from the military to a local government job?
Um, it was frustrating at first. I think going from any branch of the military to an office work can be a tremendous culture shock. I probably didn't talk to any of my female coworkers for like the first 6 months because it was the first time I was around a woman being from the infantry. And I wasn't exactly sure what to say to them that was appropriate in an office setting. But you know, you transition and you kind of get used to things. We have a Department of Veterans Affairs here in Albany County, and they help people get through that. So it was kind of tough. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, and our next question is from Aiden. Is there a good reason to potentially prioritize village, town, city government, like village versus town versus city government over county government? And how might one choose which town or city to work for? Jamie, do you
Yeah,
want to go?
I can summarize this in an easy way that I think the Albany County folks would agree. The services that because village and city are kind of the same and counties totally different. The services that they provide are just very different. Albany County and all counties in New York State do a lot of social service. Healthcare, other social welfare, many other things too, but your city and your village, they do things like the streetlights and the sidewalks, and the counties will do that on county roads, but it's a little more limited, for those types of services. So it really depends on what you want, what type of government you want to be a part of. County governments are typically bigger, and your villages or your cities, they provide probably more of the things that people would assume your local government does, just the average person. But obviously county government, very, very, very important for a lot of people too.
Yeah, Anna, do you want to follow up?
I will follow the questions.
Anna, do you mind saying it louder? So, no, it's okay. So Anna in class here is just has a follow-up for Jamie here.
So would you say that there is like more room for advancement in one size versus the other?
It's all different, especially in New York. There are some county governments that are very small. There are some county governments that are huge, and some cities that are small, some villages that are small. So if you go work for a very small village, I'll pick on the village of Voorheesville, which is not too far from here. They probably have like 15 employees. So there's not a lot of room for advancement in a place like that. But Albany County has what, 500 employees more?
About 2,300 on a normal
2,400.
day.
A lot of room for advancement.
Yes.
The bigger you go, but like the village of Voorheesville, very, very, very small. So it just depends on the size. And there's some counties, Schoharie County, very small. There's probably not a lot of room for advancement there, but there may be some targeted positions that are like department heads or whatnot that may be a little bit easier to attain than in a county like Albany County. So maybe there's a reason you would want to go, or maybe you live there and that's where you're from, or but it's all the local governments are different. And it's so complicated in New York because there's towns, villages, cities, counties. You can work for a fire district as a clerk. You can work for a water district. It's all very complicated. So unfortunately, it's hard to say, but it just depends on the circumstance. It's just not very general.
Yeah, Dan.
You talk a little bit more about the New York Helps program and what the application process is like?
Yeah, do you want that for the
Sure.
Zoom members? You guys heard that, right?
Yes, New York Helps program in the application process. Is that correct? Okay, great. So the New York Helps program, if we have a position approved for the New York Helps program, for Albany County at least, it will show up on the Albany County's civil service portal with parenthetical helps at the end of it. So it'll say parentheses helps at the end, and it will also say non-competitive next to the classification. So that is how you will know a position is approved for New York Helps. And the application process for any of those helps positions is just like anything that you would see off of Indeed, just like anything from the private sector. You would just upload the materials that it says are required on the posting, and you would hit apply on our portal. So there's no arduous like application process where you're going through an approval and then you have to come into the office to sit for something. You just apply online as if it is a regular job posting on Indeed or on ZipRecruiter. And then if you'd like, you can of course follow up with the hiring manager. But other than that, you just wait to get contacted for the next step of the process.
Does that help, Dan?
Does that answer the question? Okay.
And
Thank
Tim, maybe you could share some information with Christina after this, and she could disseminate the class.
Absolutely. I have a helps flyer that I can share with you, Christina.
That'd be great. Thank you, Michael and Tim. No, that's great. Thank you.
And just so you all know, HELPS is not a Albany County specific program. It is happening at all levels of New York State. So City of Albany has HELPS titles, New York State has HELPS titles, Albany County has HELPS titles, and so does every county around in the city. So it's really being widely used in New York right now, and I highly recommend you take advantage of it while it's around until June of 2026.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. So I'm going to jump into our next question here from Ryan. What opportunities for growth exist in local government?
So that really will depend on what level of government you come in on. At Albany County, for example, we have people start off as keyboard specialists and then spend 30 years at the county and work their way all the way up to a department head position. That's not something that's necessarily uncommon in Albany County. I have somebody that works with me in my department that started off as a clerk in social services about 10 years ago, and now he's one level above me, personnel technician in civil service. So there are many, many growth opportunities at Albany County. It really just depends on what you would like to specifically do. Because if you keep an open mind, there are opportunities everywhere at the county level and at the city level. It really just depends on your willingness to try new things, transfer in different departments, and go into new fields.
I also think in general, there's opportunities everywhere in government, all levels of government right now, similar to a lot of the private sector.
Mhm.
There's job shortages for all of these positions that are that get posted at state and local level, and people are getting promoted at faster levels than they used to. People are getting hired quicker than they used to. The New York Helps program is an example of that, to try to help with the worker shortage, facing local governments in particular. But I mean, I guess that's the same for kind of all aspects of our economy right now. I would say we'll see if that continues, if there's some state budgetary issues, there could be financial constraints at all levels of government in the future, and maybe, but for the present, it's a great time to get hired, and a great time to get promoted and excel.
Thanks.
Yeah, and to kind of double on that, we see when we look at the demographics of local government that there's a silver tsunami, is what they call it a lot, of individuals in middle and upper management that are going to be retiring in the coming years. And those positions don't have clear successors at the moment. So now would be a good time to get in with the idea that upward mobility can occur. A separate track that you can look at too is working for elected officials, which is still in the civil service system, but you do take a little bit of a risk there. When you work for an elected official, a lot of times your employment, depending on the work you do, is tied to them staying in office, and it does give you the chance to move upward. I went to Rockefeller with a woman, her name was Lauren, and she worked for the lieutenant governor. She was her director of operations, and she got promoted to that position after interning with her. Well, she was working with her when she was lieutenant governor, Hochul. And in a matter of 3 months, Lauren became like the director of operations for New York State. and it just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But you find that that happens with certain individuals, and you kind of start this rotation where you come up with a sort of cohort, and you see those people moving around between City of Albany, New York State, Comptroller's Office, Albany County. So there's a lot of career mobility, not necessarily always vertically, but horizontally.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Perfect. All right. Looks like we've got another question here from Sophia. All right. Perfect. So Sophia asks, can you talk more about the MPA program? As someone starting in the fall, I'd love to know some tips that you wish you knew going into the program.
Sure. I can start off with that. The one thing that I will say as a history student coming into the program that I was not prepared for was the amount of group work that I was about to be doing in the MPA program. Almost all of the work that you do in the MPA program is group work, and that is very key to your future career because in government at any level, a lot of what you're going to be doing is working in teams. I can't do almost anything on my own in my position. I always have to go to somebody else, get some information from them, clear something by them, make sure something's okay. There's very little that I can actually do a lot of the time fully independently. So being able to work in a team is something that's really key and something that you will develop in the MPA program. I will say in the beginning it was a little bit difficult. You're going to have some growing pains. I think everybody has at least one bad group in the program, but as long as you are resilient and you understand that sometimes the harder part of the assignment is actually doing the teamwork than the actual assignment itself, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. Michael, do you want to speak to anything on your side?
Yeah, I would say that you treat it not just as an opportunity for education, but a networking opportunity as well. Like I mentioned before, that cohort that you kind of come up with, I still interact with a lot of people that I went to get my MPA with. And sometimes I see them regularly, sometimes I just bump into them and we know each other. But you will always remember if there was someone in your group, like Tim was saying, who did not
Yeah,
pull their weight. And if that person's resume comes across your desk, you're going to be like, Amy, not a chance am I going to hire Amy. I
they
didn't do
will
all her
stick with
work.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So just remember that you're going to run into these people after you graduate if you stay in the area.
The Rockefeller Alumni Network is vast and very successful in the long run. Like filled at every state agency, every local government in upstate New York. I mean, elected officials, members of Congress, secretaries of federal agencies, federal departments. The Rockefeller Network is large.
Thanks, Jamie.
Mhm.
That's great. No, that's a great question, Sophia. Thank you. Okay, so next question here we've got from Ryan. How would you describe the work environment you're in? It's a good question.
That's a good question.
I can take that one. So the work environment for me is very fast paced. It's evolving. As much as I would like to be proactive, unfortunately, I am reactive on a lot of things just because that's the nature of how things come into our office. Um, I love it. That's the type of work environment that I thrive in. I feel like a lot of people that work for elected officials are in a very fast-paced environment. But it means that if you want to take the time to further your education or really research something, a material, you're going to have to find your own time to kind of do that. I have a great work-life balance. I'm able to go to my kids' softball games, baseball games, but it's fast-paced and it's good. I like it that way.
It can be really different depending on what parts of government you work in. I think government is famous for being like bureaucratic and lots of 9 to 5, and I think that's almost a critique. But well, I would also say for a lot of people who work, especially for state agencies and who are union employees, like that's the predictability of it and the flexibility is a big reason why they want to do what they're doing. But also, if you're working for an elected official, it's totally different. It is exactly as was just described. It can be extremely fast paced. It can, every minute of every day is unpredictable. You'll have meetings planned for certain times a day, and then the meetings just don't happen because something popped up that's critical that you have to deal with, and you can't do the meetings that you were expecting. It can be a lot more than a 9 to 5, and it can be less. It can be a lot less predictable than some of the civil service type jobs. But for many people, and I would say most people that go into working for an elected official rather than civil service, they want that. And that may sound a little crazy, but there's definitely a lot of people who want more of that atmosphere.
And as someone that works more on the bureaucratic side and not directly under an elected official, I will say that, to be honest, my work environment is pretty self-set. I do the work that I kind of want to do each day, and that sounds weird to say out loud, but it is very true. And in my specific department and in the work that I do, what I do each day is guided by my motivation. And because I'm someone that is motivated to do the work that I want to do, I thrive in that sort of environment. There are other people that don't thrive like that. You know, you hear those stereotypes of the government employee being lazy, not doing anything. And there are definitely some people that may take advantage of that environment where you set your own pace and do less than, what they might be expected to do. But what I would say is if you are a um, more on the civil service side, bureaucratic side, know that you're going to have a great work-life balance 90% of the time. You might have some, fires you have to put out on occasion, but a lot of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is going to be motivated by yourself. And that's a really great feeling when you accomplish something that you did purely because it's something that you wanted to do.
And just to kind of follow up with what both Jamie and Tim said, um, there's a lot of state agencies. You can just go on to Reddit, and there's like threads on Reddit for New York State Civil Service, and you can see what agencies you should not work for because they are monotonous and you don't get anything assigned to you. But if you are applying for jobs, make sure you go ahead and try to get as much research as you can. Find someone that works there and ask what the environment is, because a lot of those jobs are not like the jobs that we have. They're the 9 to 5 widget makers, and they're totally important for the work that is done in state government. But they can be a little dreary, and if that's not your thing, you want to know ahead of time.
That's a good point. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Tim, too. All right, so I'm just gonna check the chat, and then Ryan just said thank you. Okay, perfect. Any other questions from, if anybody, I know I've got this weird, yeah, and remind me your name.
Joseph.
Joseph, yeah, so Joseph in class here has a question.
Hi, so I was just wondering, how important do you think it is, or at least what are the benefits of, I know you mentioned it a little bit before, of graduate school, but how much does that help you in terms of a career in local government? And can one thrive or succeed in local government with just a simple undergrad degree?
Yeah, no, 100%. So one of my bosses, so the deputy county executive is right above me. He has his bachelor's degree, and he, is the second person that's in charge of Albany County. Someone right next to me that I work with, Cam Sagan, he's director of policy. He has his bachelor's degree. He's never wanted to pursue his master's, totally attainable. Your master's does get you the foot in the door. It gives you opportunities to kind of advance at a quicker rate. Some state agencies require a master's degree, but there's also the fellowships that come along with masters, like the Excelsior Fellowship, the Albany County Fellowship, which are essentially pipelines to bring you from that master's degree program directly into state government at a nice high-paying job. So it's attainable. You can go either way. It just depends on, do you want to enter the workforce first and really start grinding at it, or do you want to take a little bit more time and see if you can start with a leg up?
Completely agree. You know, people get into local government all the time without having their master's degree. And if you want to get a master's degree that's not an MPA, we have a spot for you in local government too. You don't just need an MPA to get into local government either. But with just a bachelor's degree, you can definitely still work in government and move up the chain. Like Michael said, his deputy, he just has a bachelor's. My director in my department, she only has a bachelor's, so it is certainly attainable to move up in local government with just your bachelor's degree. But something that is great about the any graduate program is that it just gives you that extra layer of analytical ability that will assist you in your position in ways that are really unexpected, to be honest. You know, you'll be surprised at how a graduate education might assist you in the future, just in small ways, but if you're not, you know, geared toward graduate education, it's not like it's the end of the world for you in terms of moving up in local government.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And thanks.
Mhm.
I would say most, well, it's so hard to say. It really depends on the job that you're applying for. But most of the administrative civil service jobs would require just a bachelor's degree. And I think some jobs in New York State will require a master's degree or something. Or the other thing that you'll see a lot in job postings is a master's degree or 5 years in this field or 7 years in this field. So what it will do is it'll help you jump the line. And it'll allow you to actually be qualified for that position where you otherwise wouldn't at that point in your career. It also, if you're looking at two resumes and one person went to grad school and one didn't, it's obviously it's a plus. So it just helps you in looking, you know, when you're being interviewed, it's obviously a boost, but it's not necessarily required for a ton of jobs. For the most part, it's a bachelor's degree.
Great. Thanks, Jamie.
People prefer to relevant years of work experience over a graduate degree.
I think it depends on where someone, I hate to say, I keep saying it depends, but it really does. It depends on where they work. If it's something that is relevant to what I'm hiring for, I probably would prefer that, but if it's something that is very different, then I think a grad degree is better. But actually, what I would prefer is both. So what I would recommend, if you feel it's right for you, what I like, and I think it shows a lot of drive in a person if they go and get a job that just requires a bachelor's degree, and then part-time they get a grad degree. So eventually you get, and I don't know if either of you went that way, but I think it just shows a lot of drive to be able to do that. It's an impressive thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's great to see when someone's getting an education and they're working at the same time. And a lot of municipalities do a tuition reimbursement, so
Yeah.
it helps in that
Yes.
regard too.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I just want to follow up on for resumes and trying to, get notice from a stack. Like, are there any professional certifications that you look for, sort of like a PMP or anything like that that can help you get noticed?
Yeah, PMP is great. I'm trying to hire an operations analyst right now, and that's the certification that I'm looking for. If you get an HR certification, it can be SHRM, it can be HRCI. Those are fantastic to see on a resume too. Because like what Jamie said, it shows that you're investing in yourself, but you're also getting a great foundation of human resources or project management. Those are probably the two that I would encourage you to go after because they're recognized by the field that people are hiring in.
We can move this over this way. Any other questions? These are great questions. Thank you, all three of you, for your thorough answers too. I appreciate it. And we appreciate it. Let's see. More questions on Zoom? Any more in person? Yeah, you can go first.
All right, I mean, whether it's a state agency job or a county job, or, I mean, what would be sort of the strategically most effective way to try and apply to a job so that you're not getting, lost in the stack of resumes? Or, I mean, you mentioned the job fair earlier. Is that like, is that a strong advantage over just sending in a resume, or what is the best way to kind of get noticed?
So for myself, I do take note of people that I meet at job fairs. I will say that there are times that I go the extra mile to blast their resume out. You know, if I meet someone at a job fair that seems particularly passionate about working at the county. But the main thing that I would say in the application process that you can do to set your resume apart or your application in general is make sure that for the position that you're applying for, make sure you specifically address how you meet the qualifications for that position in your resume or in your application file somewhere. So, for example, this is a bad example for you all, but at Albany County, we have positions that require, for example, 2 years of secretarial or clerical experience. I need to see specifically how you demonstrate that experience in your application, and the more detailed you can be, the better a lot of the times. So that's not the best experience because it's so vague, but there are more specific jobs that we do have that dictate you need to have a certain amount of years of experience dealing with affirmative action for a private or public organization, or for Michael's operations analyst position, it might say something along the lines of dealing with large scale operations in a public or private organization. We would want to see specifically how that's spelled out in your application, if that makes sense. The other thing that you can do for the county is get in touch with the hiring authority or the hiring manager. So for us specifically, we always put the point of contact for our job postings on the job postings. I always encourage people to follow up on their application, try to see where it's at with that point of contact. And if you are applying for the state, the main thing that I would really recommend is make sure that you follow their application instructions to a T, because if you do not follow their application instructions, your application will likely just be tossed out and will not be considered. And they can be pretty specific on what they require sometimes for some of their applications. So you might see like sometimes you need to put the vacancy ID in the subject of your email when you're submitting your resume, or you need to submit 2 professional references and 2 academic references for the state, things like that. So for the state, you really want to make sure you're following those application instructions to a T.
Yeah.
I would, I think the relevant pieces under the position in your resume is probably the most important, the description of it. That's what will make you stand out, rather than like the position. They're going to be looking at the bullet points underneath the job that you had, or the internship that you had, what skills you gained from it. And then obviously they'll look at, education too. That's another critical piece of it. The other thing that I think, it doesn't necessarily get your foot in the door, but when someone's deciding between maybe 3 or 4 people, references is what will make you stand out. Yeah, it's an interview, but it's more so someone that's known you for a while and knows how important you were to where you were interning, where you were working. Having good references is critical. So like in particular, if you're in various internships, get to know that internship supervisor, show the worth that you bring, talk about your career goals. Going that extra mile will really turn into a good reference, because if I'm hiring a stranger, I want to talk to someone who knows them. And the last piece, at every level of government, it does help if you know someone who works in maybe that agency or that department, who could just send your resume along. And not that it's like you're being hired because you know them, but they can vouch for you as a validator from someone that they trust. And that helps you stand out a little more. And it could be anyone in that, and It could even be someone who's in a totally other part of that state agency, but it can just help. It can help to make you stand out a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna take remind me your name one more time.
Joseph.
Joseph. All right, so Joseph has a question and we'll probably wrap up after that. But just if Tim and Michael, would you be okay with me sharing your contact information with the students after?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. And Michael, would that be okay with you?
Definitely.
Thank you, and Jamie, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So if you do have further questions, feel free to follow up with any of the three panelists following the Zoom and session. So Joseph, I'll have you ask question here.
So I would say this question pertains to all three of you and your careers. I was just wondering if there's a lot of overlap between the more politics campaigning side of government and the actual, civil service side of government, and if there's a lot of career flexibility between the two.
I'll let them go.
So, speaking as someone that works in civil service, I do not have any overlap with any politics whatsoever. In my position, I specifically don't deal with elected officials a lot of the time, especially because I'm a lower level employee in civil service. I don't have that reach to have meetings with the county executive. You know, I'm not meeting with Michael's bosses. At most, I might be getting in touch with Michael to talk with him about an issue. But for myself, there is not much overlap at all between the civil service bureaucrat side and the politics side. And I would say for Albany County's employees, that is the standard. We have, like we mentioned over the beginning of the session, we have about 2,300 employees at Albany County. There are very few of those employees that actually deal with politics in any manner. The ones that do work in politics would be the ones that work in Michael's office, the county executive's office, or the county legislature. And those are the minority of our employees, I would say, maybe 100 employees out of the 23 to 2,400 we have work in those two offices.
Yeah, Tim said it very well. I'm in a political office. I, volunteer on the county executive's campaign. I volunteer on other campaigns for Dan Lynch when he ran for judge, Jeff Jameson when he ran for judge, Sherry Brooks. It's totally optional. It can, a lot of people get confused because they feel like it's expected because they're working in a political office. So they're torn and they're like, I'm pressured to do it. But we have people in our office who do absolutely nothing in terms of the political side of things. They might show up to a golf event because they want to play some golf, but that's the end of it. So a lot of it's at your own discretion. But if you like that kind of thing, you'll get recognized for it. So it can't hurt.
I would say politics and just the trends of public policy impacts so many jobs, and even ones that you might not think of. If you work in a public works department, how much we're funding our roads has a big impact on your job. Like, do we have the money to repair the roads? So, it has an impact. But I would say to it and following it, and that is relevant to that local government. Probably the federal politics don't impact local government too much. However, today I would say that they impact it overwhelmingly, because if we are with what's happening in the stock market today, if we are headed into struggling economic times, that might have a big impact in local government a year from now, 2 years from now. So it is all related, and the politics of it all does impact things. If you work in a county government, a city government, and you're somewhere in civil service, and the head executive or the legislature changes in kind of a dramatic way, and they have very different public policy proposals, your job is probably going to be impacted. What you do will be impacted. You're civil service, so you're not going to be fired like, people who are at-will employees, but it impacts everything, everything that you do. It impacts the priorities of the office. It impacts how you interact with people. It may impact your bosses. Your boss might change because maybe your boss gets fired and then there's a new boss who comes in. So it does have an impact.
Great question. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap up. These have been amazing questions. And as I said, Jamie, I'll have you be next to me here. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to spend with us. This has been excellent. And be sure to share your information with our students. And we really appreciate it. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to, provide answers to the questions that students have. So thank you both, Tim and Michael and Jamie, so much for being here. And let me know if you have any questions following the session as well. And I'm going to turn it around to our in-person crew. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
everyone. Reach out if you have any questions. Nice to meet
Yeah,
you all.
reach out. Definitely. Love to hear from you all.
great. Thank you so much, Tim. And Michael, we really appreciate it. I'm going to end the recording or stop the recording here. And for students in our class, I will have you guys join after about 10 minutes, but let me actually stop the recording. So